I've been there.
It's not been my experience that they've taken apart an issue like this in the way that you're describing, but that's my experience. But more importantly, I think if there are any repercussions for someone speaking outside of what would otherwise be a rule for the task force, I think there actually might be celebrities implications and legal ones. I don't know that the task force has the authority actually to constrain the speech of members of the task force. I'm not sure one way or the other.
No, you can have a spokesperson. I think
I don't know that you can limit the speech with there being sanctions as a result of speaking.
No, I'm not asking for sanctions. Let me make myself clear, and I'm not asking people to cease to exercise their civil rights. I'm asking for a motion and agreement amongst us that will pursue what I believe is a very prudent path in dealing with the media to help ensure that our work gets done and that we don't get sidetracked or undercut by media people. And I have to disagree with you, Peter. I've seen this over and over again, where the media wants to do that. They're there to gather audiences and sell papers.
Mr. Chair, this is a
Walter Cronkite's gone, unfortunately.
This is a public forum. Anytime we speak,
Sure.
anything we say is public, and all the media
Absolutely.
does is broaden that. So we're doing the same thing if we speak to the media that we're doing here.
It's not the same. Let me tell you why it's different, okay? Here, we have a forum and we can discuss things. And if I say something you don't like, you can question it and you can go on the record saying that you don't like it, et cetera, et cetera. With the media, you can't do that. In fact, you can't even determine what it is they're going to print of what you said. You could have said, you could have spoken for half an hour and they'll take 3 words that you don't want them to say that you said and run with that. And let me put this on the table, just so you understand. I'm not doing this out of ego or anything else. In fact, I'm exposing myself more than any of you to a lot of exposure, really criticism, and it's all going to come down on me if I'm the spokesperson, and I'm the chair anyway, so even if you guys say stuff, it's still going to come down on me. So I'm not doing this lightly. I'm doing it because my past experience has told me that if we want to get our work done in an efficient manner and want to minimize the ability of media or anyone else to pick us apart and create dissension on the task force, this is the way to go about it. Okay, again, I'm going to take a couple more comments and then I want to put it to the question.
Motion to vote.
Okay,
Yeah, I just wanted to.
last comment.
Question for the call.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, a motion to call the question
Okay.
supersedes all other discussion. Until you vote on the motion to call, can't be any more discussion.
So we have to vote on the motion to call the question?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of having the vote, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Could we have a show of hands?
Okay, show of hands. Oh, I don't vote. Did you get that?
Mr. Lang?
Okay, could you restate the motion, please?
The motion was to have the chair conduct all interaction with the media.
Media, that's everybody. Okay, thank you. All right, call for the vote. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Those against the motion? Okay, the motion is defeated. I'm gonna have to do some thinking about this, folks. I mean, my position as chair. I may drop off this task force. I'm very uncomfortable with everybody speaking to the press, and I don't want to be held responsible for that. So I'm giving you, I know it's not a threat, I just have to think about it. I think this work is very important. I fought to be chair, I want to be the chair, but I'm very, very concerned about usage of the media, and I didn't bring this up, but some of my fellow task force members wanting to use the media themselves to push their own agendas and their own purposes. So there, I've said it, I've put it out on the table, and you know where I'm coming from. I'll have to think about it.
Mr. Chair, I
Yes,
just
sir.
have to say, I mean, that is what will create dissension on this task force. I think let's trust that everyone comes to this task force with the ambition to see the POC improve, and that we will all carry out our jobs responsibly until we see other indications. I think that we have to trust that people who are on this task force are on it for the right reason. I've seen no other
Okay.
indications to no indications to the contrary.
Okay. Sometimes I react too quickly, that's why I wanted to think about it. I appreciate your comments.
And I hope you will continue on as our chair.
Thank you. Let me just say this and then I'll close this up. Yes, ma'am.
I understand your point, because I come from a background when it was more important for one person to talk to the press than to talk to the rest of us, because things are misconstrued. Yeah, that's a big issue, not what our agenda is, but things are misconstrued by the press. And with one person speaking, being the voice of all of us, it really helps. So I do understand where you're coming from.
Okay, let me say this, and then I want to close this. I'll give it some very careful thought, and I'd like my fellow task members to do the same. And maybe we can just agree informally that most times I guess he hung up. He's had it. That you refer the media to me so I can speak for the task force and we don't have a lot of conflicting messages out there. So I'm going to leave it to common sense for now, and thank you for your comments, Peter. Yes.
I just have one comment I want to make. I get in trouble all the time for exercising my First Amendment rights. My concern here is that it's such an emotional issue. I mean, it's kind of like Syria. Do we go or do we not? And so, with everyone, you know, being able to exercise their First Amendment rights.
Hang on a second. Oh, okay.
Oh, is that what happened?
Okay,
Anyway,
sorry, go ahead, go on.
From a psychological perspective, I would simply ask that everyone be very conscious that we need to be neutral here, regardless of what, you know, background we come from, what we want to promote, what we want to know, what we want to do, so that we can continue to work effectively together.
That's a very good point. Let me echo that by saying that we do all come from different perspectives. When you agreed to serve on this task force, you agreed to, my perception, you agreed to act as a team. So what I want to emphasize is moving forward, you need to be cognizant of why you're here and the people that you represent, but also that we have to work as a team. We have a very important task to do, very important work to accomplish, and we may disagree, but we don't want to be fighting with each other, and we sure as heck don't want to be fighting in the media. It's public enough, everything we do is public, so it's not like we're hiding anything, but we don't want to grandstand in the media or play out our issues across the front page of the paper as individuals. It may get played out on the paper anyway, but at least it'll be from stuff that they get that's coming out of the task force as a whole.
Mr. Chair, maybe we can even tweak the motion and be very narrow, very specific, that any formal statement coming from the task force can come through wherever we decide to get a formal statement, but not prohibit or restrict other forms of speech, like talking to the media or giving our position or our thoughts. I mean, there may be something there in which any very specific formal statement can be
Okay.
funneled through one individual.
I don't think I'm going to ask for a motion because I don't want to get into a long discussion about that. But let me tell you, as an operational thing, that's probably how I'll operate anyway. For example, if we call a press conference, I'll take the responsibility for doing the talking. Again, it's not that I want to, believe me. Though, you know, I may trip over my own words and look like a complete idiot. You know, it's just that we should have somebody that represents us, and as the chair, I should be the person to do that. It falls on my shoulders. It's kind of like, you know, anything else like that. Okay, so let me move on to the next thing.
You have a question on the
Oh.
audience?
No, that was gonna be my motion.
Oh, well,
Move on to the next thing.
yeah. Let me go on to the next thing. The motion can always be made at the next meeting as well. So in the meantime, we move on. Email correspondence and the Open Meetings Act. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about here. We are bound by the Open Meetings Law. So going forward, and this came out in email, I do not want an exchange of ideas via email or via private meetings. It's not proper for the conduct of this task force. So please do not do that. If you have something that you want discussed, please make me aware of it, and I will put it on the agenda, and we will discuss it as a group, but not offline. We can't have conversations and discussions offline.
With all due respect, that is not what the Open Meetings Act says. The Open Meetings Act applies to a quorum of a public body.
That's right.
And if a non-quorum wants to talk about public business by phone, in person, by email, by letter, there is nothing in the law that prohibits it. The people who are discussing it have to be sure that everyone knows how many people are in the group discussing it, and that they don't communicate with other members so that the number of people who are talking about it, even separately, reaches 6, which is the quorum for this body. But unless 6 people are involved in the discussion, there is nothing in the Open Meetings Act which prohibits discussion of the business of this task force among members of the task force by any means by which they choose to talk about it.
That's not true. I'll tell you why. Because once you put an email out, you no longer have control over that email or where it gets distributed. So I'm trying to avoid that very danger. You can't be sure if you start discussing an issue via email that it's not going to widen to other members of the task force and go to 6 people and violate the Open Meetings Act. That's why I'm stipulating this. There's no reason to discuss issues that should come before the full task force among individual members. It's not productive. If you have an issue and it's a legitimate issue, bring it to the task force. We'll discuss it as a group, and it'll be discussed openly. I don't think it's a good practice to discuss issues offline. I think that's a bad practice, and I don't think you can control it. And I don't want to argue.
Well, I'm point of information.
Okay.
Are you issuing a directive? And if so, by what authority?
I'll do it this way, okay? I'll ask for a motion that issues that need to be discussed by the task force do not get discussed via email or telephone. If someone will make that motion, that'll put it in the form of a directive.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would just respectfully suggest that, that we should all agree to abide by the Open Meetings Act.
Okay? My interpretation of the Open Meetings Act is that we don't discuss issues offline. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. Everyone knew we were bound by the Open Meetings Act, but yet a discussion took place via email about an issue we're going to discuss tonight. And you're the very one who pointed it out, one of the people who pointed it out. I had said something before that via email, but you made the case.
Well, I object to violations of the Open Meetings Act. I don't object to conversations that don't violate the Open Meetings
Oh, I'm not saying that. Again, I'm not saying that people can't talk to each other. What I'm saying is, and you're getting very technical here. What I'm saying is I don't want discussion taking place over email. You know what I'm talking about. You pointed it out yourself. I don't think I need to split hairs about it or get any more technical than that.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Motion was made. I'll second.
Okay?
Mr. Chair.
So it's been moved and seconded.
What, could you repeat the motion, please?
That we agree to abide by the Open Meetings Act.
Okay, I just want to point out for the task force that that was the point of the resolution that you adopted at your first meeting, that you were agreeing to abide by the Open Meetings Act with the adoption of that
Right.
resolution.
Okay, I'm gonna move on. I think I've clarified it. I think everybody knows what I'm talking about, and I think you understand. The last item under the procedural
Now we have to
issues.
vote.
No, I didn't, there's no motion. The motion has been withdrawn because it's already been.
It's a moot point.
It's a moot point, we've already done it.
The resolution.
Right. The third item is purpose of town hall meetings versus task force meetings. The town hall meetings, be they the upcoming ones or the virtual one that we're talking about, the intent of those meetings is to hear from the public, to get public input, to give the public a chance to give us feedback and give us their suggestions. On the other hand, the task force meetings are for us to have debate and express our own opinions and talk about things that we think need to be changed and that we want to see changed or that we want to talk about. Not at the town hall meetings. We can do that here. We have plenty of time to do that. These are public meetings as well. But I don't want to get into a discussion or speeches being made by task force members to the public as a whole. That's their time to hear from them. So I wanted to clarify that, and I'll open it for discussion if anybody wants to talk about it. But that's how I conceive it. Okay, I'm going to move on. Okay. Possible additional task force members / advisory board. Councilors Gardunio and Winter issued a press release, probably about 2 weeks ago now, saying that they were going to propose a resolution to expand the task force because they wanted to reach out to minority groups in the community. Again, this is a subject that came up in some of our emails. I'm going to make a suggestion, and then I'm going to open it up for discussion. Actually, before I make the suggestion, was one other thing I needed to say. Councilors Gardunio and Winter have relayed to us that they are happy with whatever decision we make as a task force. They are not demanding that we add members to this task force. If we decide that this is a good group and that we're happy with the makeup of the task force, they're happy with the process and are happy to leave us in place without any changes. Now, here's my recommendation for you to consider. And it's the setting up of an advisory board. The advisory board would be just that. We can ask for specific representatives representing specific constituencies, the Black community, the Chinese community, a particular neighborhood, LGBT people, what have you. And they would be asked to attend our meetings and to function as an advisory board to advise us on issues that might touch on their areas of concern, but they would be non-voting members. In other words, we wouldn't really add any voting members to the task force, but would empower an advisory board to advise us about particular issues. That's my recommendation. We don't have to do either of them. We don't have to do that either. But it may be a way to provide input from specific groups in the community who are feeling left out of the process, but without having to expand the task force and have more voting members. I'll open it up for discussion.
I would lean against having an advisory board, adding more members. If we look at the time, it's 8:03, we were scheduled for 7:30 with 11 people. So we're not gonna be able to add enough people to get everybody in the community. It's not gonna happen. You can bring in 5, 6, 7 people representing 5 or 6, 7 groups. There's gonna be more. There's gonna be more. We're a very diverse city. So just the mere fact that 11 people have taken this long, we're not even done with the agenda. I've seen this from city council. We can't please everybody. We can't bring in enough representation. It's not gonna happen. We all have to do our best. We've got a very vast, different group here that we do represent. If we do our job, and if we do it diligently, we'll do just fine. But my recommendation is no increase, and that should be our comments to the city council that no, we're doing just fine.
Okay.
We've already missed several meetings, so I mean, it would do no good to bring more in and try and catch them up.
All right, thank you. Other comments?
I agree.
Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion then. We need a motion here because we have to come up with some sort of resolution and relay that back. I don't think it goes back to the city council, it goes back to Councilors Garduno and Winter, who haven't proposed anything to the council yet, so it would go back to them. So if someone will make a motion,
I'll make a motion that we send a resolution to the city council that we're doing just fine and we decline their offer.
is there a second?
Second.
I don't know who raised their hand first, I'm gonna give it to Nancy. Okay, so now it's on the floor, discussion.
John,
Yes, sir.
I guess if you want to refresh my memory, I was in that city council meeting when they were talking about the resolution and several public comments that were made. We felt because there were some groups left out, that maybe the city council should consider adding more members. So it really sounds like it's something that's on the city council to decide. I'm not so sure that it's our role to decide, because that was an issue that came up during the city council meeting. And if Councilors Winter and Garduno are okay with that, I think ultimately it was proposed to them, and then they made the recommendation, or then they said they would consider that suggestion. And so,
My understanding is that they're the ones who are responsible for drafting a resolution to expand the task force, and they've relayed to us, if we don't want that to happen, they won't propose the resolution. So it is kind of, to put it in crude terms, it's being dumped back at us to either allow for expansion, allow some interim step like I've suggested, or to just say, fine, we're fine and we want to continue to operate the way we're operating. So there's a motion on the floor, additional comments about it. That was just to clarify.
I would just suggest that we make some formal effort to reach out to those groups that don't feel like they're included, to make sure that they have a place at the podium to address us and bring up whatever concerns they might have.
Well, that's what I'm suggesting an advisory board,
Yeah.
that we actually designate people who represent those communities. For example, Dr. Bailey is the president of the NAACP chapter. He's the one who came before us and raised this issue. We could ask Dr. Bailey to serve on that advisory board. And therefore, he'd be represented. He can't vote, but he'd be there to make comment. And I understand your concern, Ms. Toy, but I'm also concerned about the perception from the public and looking for a way to give them a voice somehow, but without hampering our process. That's why I recommended that.
I agree with an advisory board, because I think people should feel like they have a part in the process, a stake in the process, and that they can come here and speak and not have a vote, but at least they're invited to voice, they know that we have an open door to hear them out.
I have
Wagman and Mr.
I have a problem either way, because 11 of us are not even close to adjourning.
Yeah, that's my fault. I should have run
No,
faster.
well, no, I think it's gonna happen every time. We have a lot of work to do, and we have a bunch of people having to make a decision. And adding 4 more people makes it that much more difficult. On the other hand, each of us put our names in as individuals, not as a slate. We had no role in selecting, who we were on this task force with. And I do share the concerns of a number of people who have spoken about the lack of representation of several groups in the community and the weighting of who is on this task force. And because I have problems with either one, what I would like to do is let the council, which actually represents the entire city, make the decision rather than asking us to make the decision. We didn't pick ourselves. They did. Let them decide where it goes from here.
It's like a game of football. Here, it's your ball.
Well, I
I hear what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
Right.
make light of it or anything else. It's just kind of, everybody wants to pass the buck, so to speak. Mr. Berlin, you had a comment?
Yeah, well, actually, it's very similar to what Mr. Wagman just said, because, you know, the city council created this task force, and they certainly have the prerogative of adding members, eliminating members, or doing anything else they want. It's like an old, one of the mayors I served under used to say, 6 members of the city council is like a 600-pound gorilla. They can do whatever the hell they want. And that's true, because you know, so I would agree with Mr. Wagman that they, you know, they can do whatever they want, but we don't have a role here to decide of what, you know, we didn't get to pick each other for the task force.
No,
and
but
so they
now,
are.
but now we're a sitting task force.
Well, I understand, but I still think that it's a council decision, and we have no business talking about the composition of something that they generated or created.
Okay, so Mio and then John.
I think she was, did you have
Oh,
your hand?
somebody else? I didn't, sorry, I didn't see it.
I think there's also a problem with perception and changing midstream is, oops, we didn't get it right the first time. And then later with votes coming up and saying, yeah, but you weren't here for the first meeting, you didn't hear things like this. And so I think changing in midstream can create multiple difficulties. And perception is a big thing. And what we're talking about is public image and perception.
Okay, thank you.
I hope this isn't misconstrued, because it's not racial, but I want to point something out. When Mr. Bailey spoke to us, the following week, I kept hearing, we saw in the news about the March on Washington, the anniversary. And one phrase of Dr. King's speech that they repeated over and over again was, I dream of a time when my 4 children will live in a nation when they are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the conduct of their character. Okay, and I think it works both ways. That 46% of the population in this city is Hispanic, all right? And I'm looking at the makeup of this board. And there's not one of you that I question that doesn't care about this community and about every racial group. You know, I think you have to be judged on the conduct of your character, and I see very good characters here. How do I mean that?
I think we understand.
But you understand what I'm saying.
Yes.
I think it's a very good group of people, even if I weren't here. From what I can see, you're a good group of people who care about the entire community. So
Okay.
I just want to throw that in.
John?
Mr. Chairman, task force members, I just want to say on behalf of Councilors Garduno and Winter, they weren't trying to pawn this off on you, and they're not trying to, you know, throw the hot potato back on your lap. They're concerned about diversity, representation, minority representation. But at the same time, they're also concerned about making the task force unwieldy and making the task force so large that it can't really operate, certainly in the time frames that it's been given. And so what they wanted was to hear from you, and I know there's a motion on the table.
There is.
At this point to say, you know, we're good as it is. I think if that is the sentiment of the task force, what the councilors would very likely want to hear is there a way to reach out to those communities? Is there a way to make them feel a part of the process?
Okay. Could you please restate the motion, and I'm going to call for a vote on it.
The motion was to send a resolution to the city council explaining that we're declining their offer of adding more members to the task force.
Okay. All those in favor of declining adding any members to the task force or an advisory board or so forth, please raise your hand.
Wait, point of order,
Okay.
I have a question. The motion was to decline adding members.
Right,
It was not addressing the issue of an advisory board.
right, you're correct. The motion, state the motion one more time, or I'll state it for you. This is what we're voting on.
My recommendation would be to send a resolution to the city council declining their offer to add more members or to create an additional advisory group for the task force.
You changed your motion.
You put it back to me for statement.
Okay, who seconded the motion?
We need,
Peter, do you wanna, are you seconding that motion? Because he changed the motion a little.
Sir, can you restate the motion? Send a resolution to the city council declining to add more members or additional members as an advisory board to the committee. I don't want more advisory board members, and I don't want, as we've talked here about an advisory
I
group.
think we need two motions.
Yeah.
Well,
I
or
would ask
you
for
need
two
to state your
motions.
motion differently. Let me separate it out into two motions. I'm gonna go back to your original motion,
Okay.
because I think that's what's causing the problem. Your original motion was to decline adding any members to the task force.
Correct.
Period. Peter, that's your second, right? Okay, I'm gonna call for the vote. You're voting on a motion to send a message back to city council that we do not want to add any members to the task force. All those in favor of that motion, raise your hand. Those against? Okay, did you get the vote? Okay, is there another motion someone
Yes,
wants?
make a motion that we open the discussion or to allow for advisory board members, and make a motion that we allow for advisory board members.
Can you make that non-voting advisory board members so that it's clear that they're not members of the task force? I don't want to write your motion for you, but
I make a motion that we allow for non-voting advisory board members to participate in this process.
is there a second? Is there a second?
I'll second and discuss.
Okay, the motion's been moved and seconded, now we'll discuss it.
Ralph,
It's open for discussion.
what does that look like in your mind? What is an advisory?
What does it look like in my mind? I think we need to see some people here from the Native American community, the African American community, the Asian community, various communities, those that have PTSD, maybe, LGBT. I think it has to be a little bit more there's people out there, there's voices out there that aren't on this table. Again, the people I just mentioned, Native Americans, African Americans, Asian Americans, and others, that I think we need to reach out to and let them know that we want to hear what they have to say about participating in this process, and that they can weigh in and have a stake in this process. Not a voting, not a vote, but a stake in the process.
If I could just add something to that, and then I'll call on you, Peter. I think what we would need to do is ask staff to prepare a list of organizations like the NAACP and others that we would invite to send representatives to this advisory board, and we could have that for the next meeting, and we can look over the list, see if it's fairly comprehensive. We don't have to include every group in the world, but we want to give some additional representation to this advisory board. Peter.
My concern, well, let me start by saying that, I mean, I represent an organization that has at its heart a mission of defending racial justice, of protecting groups for equal protection under the law. But my concern is that as a procedural matter, what we will have done is simply eliminated participation in the vote, but have invited participation in discussion in such a way that we really won't have avoided what I think we were trying to avoid with our original vote. That is to say that we will have 15, as I understand, 15 members around the table discussing the issue. The only difference is 4 of them won't vote at the end of the day. That to me raises a question about, are we tokenizing those 4 people because we are holding them at arm's length but letting them participate in the discussion? is there an alternative way that we can accomplish what I think we're trying to accomplish and what the city councilors were trying to accomplish, that doesn't create a longer procedural mess for us in terms of having so many voices around the table? I think we're already a very large task force, and had I chosen it on my own, I probably would not have chosen this number of members. Could we, for example, hold some of our meetings in spaces that are owned by or rented by some of these groups? For example, isn't there a, I'm forgetting the names of some of the organizations. But there's
NAACP or.
NAACP, if they, I'm not sure if they have a name.
Yeah, I know what you're
for this.
talking about.
But could we actually accommodate things that way? Or is there another way for us to accomplish what we want to accomplish but not have to change our structure?
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Let me make two comments. One, I think moving around becomes unwieldy, and it's a why them and not us situation that we get into. So that, I think that's problematic. The running of the meetings and having the advisory board or the audience engage in discussion really falls on my shoulders in running the meeting. So if we impanel, for lack of a better word, an advisory board, I would have to try and control it in such a way that another 5 people don't make a lot of comments at every meeting or stop it every time we get into a discussion. Now, as chair, I can do that. I can call on or not call on people from the audience. And they can also, I can also have or not have public comment as well. So there is some control that I can exercise to try and limit that while still giving them a voice and having them feel that they're part of the process. They can listen, they know that they're there representing a group, and if an issue comes up that's specific, we can call on them to respond. So it would be if we went down that road, it would become a control challenge for me, I think, to avoid what both of you down at the end there have raised, and I think that is a problem. I was trying to run this within 2 hours.
Yeah, what if we were to ask either a subcommittee here or the staff to kind of put together a number of ways that we could reach out to any number of different communities, which is the goal. I think our goal, my goal is that I want to hear from everybody, but without having a formal way of having an advisory board or whatever, because it's not going to be a very practical kind of a situation, in my opinion. I've been on commissions, I've staffed a lot of boards and commissions, and it's always a problem. You know, it's an inverse kind of relationship when, you know, the more the people, the less efficient the group is and more confusing. And we have a lot of work to do on this task force, and I think that if we can figure out a way, there may be a number of different ways. Peter mentioned one, may not be the best way, but there's got to be some brainstorming about how do we reach out without having a formal addition or even an informal addition to the task force.
There's a lot of research on specific groups and their interactions with police. And I've taught cultural diversity for about 5 years. Perhaps we could put together, I would be willing to put together some documents related to that, and we could make a motion just to consider diversity, disability, and mental health issues in all our decisions.
Okay, I'm going to call the question. Could you restate the motion?
I made the motion that we do allow for an advisory board, non-voting advisory board that is made up of the various groups that I mentioned that are represented on this task force. We invite them to participate in these meetings and in this process as advisory board members, not as voting members.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that's the motion. It's been moved, seconded, and discussed. So I'm going to ask you to vote now. Those in favor of Impaneling and advisory board, raise your hands. Those against it? Okay, that motion is defeated, and the other motion passed. So I ask that you relay back to Councilors Winter and Garduno that we're happy with the task force as it is currently composed. I'll add, though, that you might want to talk to the councilors and your colleagues and come back to us with some other suggestions of ways to reach out to the public other than an advisory board.
Mr. Chairman, we can certainly do that.
Okay,
Can we make sure that is on the agenda for our next meeting?
absolutely. We'll put that on the agenda for the next meeting. Okay, we're up to number 12, schedule of future task force meetings. There's a proposed schedule in your packet. One of the dates will not work already, I can tell you. The second date, Wednesday, September the 25th, I'm crossing off because I will be at that NACO conference in Salt Lake City. So we can't meet that week. I'll be busy sitting in workshops and gathering information for our work. So if you want to look at the other dates,
Sorry, which date did you say wouldn't work?
the September 25th date won't work. So our next meeting would be next week, the 17th. And then we'll have to look for another date, late September, and then the other dates. And if you notice, there's a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday, so they're on some different days of the week.
Mr. Chairman, the ones that are relative, the ones that are new, that haven't already been scheduled, staff recommends Wednesdays to accommodate the right schedule.
That's the October 23rd and the October 30th.
The second, the 23rd, and the 30th, and then perhaps Monday the 23rd, rather than, no, that would be the same conflict with Nicole, wouldn't it? Yes.
Okay, so the dates that we're looking at to kind of lock down are September 17th, October 2nd, October,
The two in red are already scheduled, those are already there.
oh, okay. So we're looking at October 2nd, October 23rd, and October 30th.
Which is the fourth Wednesday in October, is that the 30th?
Probably, yeah.
23rd.
23rd.
The 23rd?
Oh, okay.
I'd like to see if we can change that one. Do a different date.
What's the problem with that date?
Hispanic Roundtable, we have our meetings on the fourth Wednesday of every month.
Okay. So that's the 23rd? Ralph?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm crossing off the 23rd. We'll have to look at an alternate date for that. So now we're down to October 2nd and October 30th, with looking for other dates to substitute for September 25th and October 23rd.
So October 30th stands.
Unless there are other problems being expressed. The things that are going to stand now, I'll go through them. September 17th, public forum. October 2nd, a task force meeting. October 17th, a public forum. And Wednesday, October 30th, a task force meeting, with others to be scheduled. And I think pretty soon, just so you all are aware, I think we're going to have to meet every week. Maybe more as time goes on. In fact, probably more as time goes on, judging by how long it took us tonight.
Mr. Chair, so we're looking at an alternative date for the 25th? Is that
The 23rd.
September? Okay.
Oh, and October 23rd, and we're looking for an alternate date for September 25th. So cross those two off.
We're probably going to November with a couple of, one or two.
Oh, yeah, we'll have to come up with other dates as well. This is just kind of to get us started.
Mr. Chair, just to float maybe Saturday, I'm sure Saturdays are difficult for a lot of people, but just by way of.
I would prefer not to meet on a Saturday. I don't think that's going to fly. Okay, so let's go with this schedule, and we'll look for alternate dates for Wednesday, September 25th, and Wednesday, October the 23rd. Okay, is there any other business? There being no other business? Oh, sorry. Yep.
I move to declare that it is the sense of the task force that all city officials comply promptly with all IPRA requests on this issue, honoring the spirit as well as the letter of IPRA, or give a public explanation at the next task force meeting for any IPRA requests not timely fulfilled.
So you're making a motion.
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
The motion's been moved and seconded. It's open for discussion. There being no discussion, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor of Alan's motion, read it one more time.
Mr. Chair,
Motion to declare that it is the sense of the task force that all city officials comply promptly with all IPRA requests related to the purpose of this task force, honoring the spirit as well as the letter of IPRA, or give a public explanation at the next task force meeting for any IPRA requests not timely fulfilled.
You have to want to make a comment?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I have a couple of concerns with the motion, and task force is free to do what they choose, but I'll tell you what my concerns are. Number one, we're taking up this issue as a substantive issue under other business on the agenda. It wasn't noticed, that could present an issue for
Good point.
the motion. The other is that, we haven't had an IPRA presentation to the board. Several of you on the board are attorneys, several of you may work in public service, you may be well familiar with the benefits and burdens of IPRA. IPRA is the law. It requires, beyond any policy concerns, reasonable response, in fact, within 3 days to any public inquiry. There are penalties and remedies associated with failure to respond to those things. So that's latter part is just for your information and consideration. The prior registering sort of a concern with this being taken up in this manner.
I'll withdraw the motion. Do I need a motion to have it placed on the agenda for the next meeting, or can I just make the request?
You can make the request.
So requested.
Okay. So that takes care of that, yes.
I want to thank the staff for all their work and for this, and I know they put in long hours. I saw that last night, and they're here again. So thank you very much.
Indeed they do. Thank you. Okay, there being no other business, I'm adjourning the meeting. Thank you all. I know this was a long meeting. I'll try and keep them short as best I can.
Oh, okay. Oh,
You're my
great.
dinner, Andrew.
I had it before I came.